evening. Ooh, hello. It's always an interest. I don't know where it's going to be set at. That's the benefit of having different guys back there and kind of fooling with the controls. It's really cool. And they learn it as they go. Right, Mike? Luke chapter 15. And I originally saw this idea. I saw the poem, The Porch, online and said, that'd be a great sermon. Then I saw, that'd be a great couple of sermons. Then I turned it into 3 sermons. And in reality, when I look at it, and some of you going, we're going to hear this again? Well, tonight's lesson is actually the original sermon. So, the other two, the initial addendum, because when you read Luke 15, and you read the opening verses 1 through 3, in fact, go ahead and flip over there, Luke 15, 1 to 3, it's the context for the remainder of the stories of the lost sheep, and the lost coin, and the lost son. We've called it the prodigal son, and I know that's one goes away, but I've been of the mindset for years, and this is probably 20 years ago. Johnny Melton and I and a couple other guys were sitting around talking, and you know, the story at the end of Luke 15 is not about the guy that left the house. It's about the guy that stayed at the house. I mean, in full perspective, there's a lot to be learned, and I hope you appreciated the thoughts of the one who left home and realized, if you leave home, you can't come back. If you leave the porch, you can come back to the porch. Home is a place where they will take you back in. But in Luke 15, the opening verses, then all the tax collectors and sinners drew near to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. So he spoke this parable to them. The introduction to this whole thought process of something being lost and found is about the Pharisees not understanding, the scribes, the Pharisees, the hypocrites, as he would call them in Matthew 23. You don't get why I'm here, do you? I didn't come for those who were saved. I didn't come for those who were whole. The sick are the ones who need a physician. The sinners are the ones who need to be saved. Do you think we ever need to be reminded of that? That we need to have rekindled within our brain. Maybe that's where we once were. That's the thought process I sort of had last week of looking and reminding him of the fact that the Father made some choices. The Son that left made some choices. The Son at home is going to make some choices. And by the end of this discussion, I want to kind of ask you to kind of figure out which place are you? Have you left home, come back? Are you still on the porch? Are you wondering which house you're supposed to go to? What particular destiny? What is your particular direction that you need to go in? Because there's safety on the porch. That's been a signature thing I've said every night. There is a place where everything's okay. There's a place where God wants us to know no matter what you've done, no matter where you're at, there's a place where you can go and everything will once again be as it is supposed to be. It's kind of the click your heel 3 times Dorothy moment. There's no place like home. There is a place where there is quiet rest near to the heart of God. And so that's that whole thought process. I want to introduce this a little differently tonight. When you get to that, the Father steps on the porch so the Son can return. And when you remember that imagery, and we'll get to the back porch, but I'm still, if you remember, as the son starts on his journey back, he's realized, I'll go home, I'll make the statement, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son, just make me as one of your hired slaves. On his way home, the Father sees him, and if you remember earlier in that text, it says in Luke 15, verse... And when he was still a great way off, chapter 15, verse 20, when he was a great way off, his father saw him and compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Maybe not the return that he had rehearsed, but the father leaves the porch to meet the son. I'm going to grant more than maybe halfway as soon as he saw him. I'm maybe reading into that a little bit, but as soon as he recognized his son, there's a great song, contemporary Christian song out called When God Ran. How many of you ever heard that song? Powerful, powerful song. When God ran. When God realized the son's headed home, he leaves and he runs and he embraces him. God left the porch, so to speak, through his Son, did he not? He left heaven and came more than halfway to us on a place at a location called Calvary, where his Son came and came a further distance than we could come ourselves. Remember that while we were still sinners, yet he died for us. And that's something, as you see this whole concept of the Father, he wants to do what is best for his children. Even if you don't figure in the first way he did this. But that brings a second thought. When the Son comes home, and you remember what he's rehearsed, he said, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son, just make me like one of your hired servants. And you remember what the Father said. He said, bring the robe, bring the ring, kill the fatted calf. My son who was dead is now alive. The Father has deep pockets. We talked a little bit last week about, and I asked you, would you be the father or the mother? Would you be the parent that when the younger son came, before even the eldest son did, and said, I want what's mine, and leave, would you give it to him? And I saw several of you going, I don't want to answer that question in the auditorium of the church. Because you're going, most of you are going to go, I don't think so. Don't think I'm going to give it to him because I know he's not ready. I'm going to make a better choice than this father made. I don't know that it's about the Father. I don't know that it's about the Son that left. What I do know is when the Son comes back, Father hadn't missed a great deal. And I kind of think it's, can we ever do so much? Can we take away from God? Can we ever go too far, spend too much, overindulge what the Father has at his availability? The answer to that is no. God has an overabundance. He has now you're going, but that's no reason to squander it. That's no reason to not do the right thing with it. No, absolutely not. But what I'm telling you is God's not going to run out. God's not going to go to God one time and he's going to go, I gave the last one too. Would that just not be the... And we've been in this situation before. Benevolence-wise, sometimes we've been in that situation. We've got a system set up, and Joe does a marvelous job. The elders with a lot of guidance and wisdom are making a lot of those choices. But I've been in this situation sometimes here when we've done all we can. God's never going to say, I've done all I can if there's a need. Now hear that clearly. I'm not going to say God's going to give in a moment but he's going to give when there's a need, and when that person has responded. God has deep pockets. And get this, there's always room. He's headed home going, I'll sleep in the barn. I've been in the pigsty. Barn's nothing. Dad brought him and said, come on up on the porch. Come back into the house. You're home. Now, here's the conundrum of all of that. Biblically speaking, throughout the history of the stories of the Bible and the various encounters and historical events, does it seem to you sometimes that the ones who wander the most and who squander the most and who really struggle are the ones who are celebrated the most? That there's a big, we're told by God himself in Luke when he talks about that Jesus came to seek and to save, that there be more rejoicing over one who is returned. And I guess that's kind of the ratio thing that starts happening. I think I put that on here somewhere. Yeah, I did. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me throw this thought out. Why is it that people who live the rowdy life get more praise and glory in the church and God sometimes than when they repent and return than those who've lived respectable and responsible lives? That's the thought of the end. That's the thought of the son on the back porch. That's the son that's going, where's my party? Now, I'm going to ask you, and you're not going to answer it because this is rhetorical. It's really bad that you have to introduce that, but I just don't want you to have to feel it. You ever felt like you didn't get the party you deserved? You didn't listen, did you? Have you ever been in those moments when you have invested an incredible amount of effort It could be at work. It could be at some voluntary thing. It could be in your family. And you put up all this effort and you do all the good stuff and you do the right things and nobody ever notices. And it might be at work, some individual, it's half the worker you are. Kind of comes in, does a little extra one day, and the boss comes in, man, that is just fantastic what you've done, and how do you feel? Hey, what about me? Or honor those who really deserve honor, which is those who are faithful, hardworking, and responsible. Don't honor the users and abusers until they have learned to become responsible people. You're going, you said that in church. But that's exactly the way we feel sometimes. That is exactly the way, because we've been raised better, right? We know better. Well, we do. We do. And now some of you are really nervous right now because you're going, what in the world point are you trying? You mean that it's better to blow it and then come back home than it is to stay at home and do the right thing? If that's what you're hearing, you're totally off base. That's the way we look at it sometimes. It is interesting that in this process of what he shares, remember, Jesus eats, how is it? This man eats with sinners and receives them and eats with them. He is in cahoots with. He is encouraging those who are in the wrong. And that was never what Jesus was doing. Jesus is not eating with the sinners. He didn't go to Zacchaeus' house saying, man, I'm going to go to your house because I want you to keep taking money from the Jewish people. See, when Jesus came to Zacchaeus' house, the sinner, the tax collector, the presence of Jesus evoked within Zacchaeus the right response. If I have taken, I will repay fourfold. I think that's, am I right? Daryl, help me. Fourfold, right? Fourfold. So when Jesus showed up, it wasn't just to encourage sin, it was to discourage sin. And that's why in this encounter he says, I want you to know something that's really important. There is a principle that you need to understand more than anything else, at least in this moment with the tax collectors and the sinners. There is a principle there that's called, and I spelled this wrong, it's supposed to say religious pride. So overlook my, spell check didn't stop me because religions is a word. It's supposed to say religious. Chris is put it back there changing it right now. Okay? Notice what happens in the story. What's important to God? 1 in 100. 1 in 10. Is that accurate? And when you figure out the story, as you get to this, you go, wait a minute, okay, I got the 1 in 100. So he said, if you've lost one, goes back, leaves the 99, goes look for one, rejoices when he comes back. 10 coins. She's got 9, but she goes in search of the 1. See, that should be changed, and I didn't put it up here. See, I had a great thought, and I was in typing this, and the phone rang. I remember what happened now. This should literally really be 2 of 2, or the principle of 1. And that is the one that is in need is the one that God is concerned about. You get that? That's what the whole message of this story of the coins and the sheep and the restoration. Because he's saying, I want you to understand, you can be so proud religiously that you get caught up in the fact that God has saved you and you're not concerned about anybody else. That you can be comfortable and confident in your own conversion and then realize, well, there are other people that need this, but I'm not really thoughtful of them right now. That's why Jesus in this moment said, yeah, I'm spending time with the tax collectors and the sinners. In fact, I am making sure that they understand that I know I'm here for them. There was a moment in one of the encounters of Jesus in a similar venue like this, like Zacchaeus, and he goes to his house. It's when he goes to Simon's house, who is evidently a very prominent member of the Sanhedrin. And the lady who comes in and starts to anoint his feet, and of course Simon's there, and he's in his head, we kind of get this conversation that he's reasoning, does Jesus know how bad a woman this is? Does he know who she is, and that everybody in town knows what she does? And Jesus knew. And that's that moment, if you remember, that when Jesus is having a conversation with him, and he asks him a very easy question, who loves more, the one who's forgiven more? And he said, since I came in, you didn't give me any water for my feet. It's kind of similar to the upper room episode. Somebody's supposed to take care of the responsibility. Simon says, I'm not going to do it because, I'm the head of this household and it's all my responsibility. So whoever's supposed to fell down on that job. A woman comes in and she breaks this alabaster woman, and it's actually with her tears that she washes Jesus' feet. You see, Jesus wants us to understand an overriding principle. Who's important in reference to salvation? Any and every person that is in need. What's he willing to do? Well, obviously, with the one who's left and come home, he's willing to forgive and to grant sonship again. We talked about that, John 1. But then we get to Luke 15, verse 25. Now his older son was in the field, and he came and drew near to the house. He heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, lo, I can just hear him. Can't you hear him? These many years I have been serving you. I'd like to do some inquiry about this personally. Now maybe there's a good outside chance that never is accurate, but how accurate is never? Usually. Never did anything to disappoint you. Never did anything for you to not. I've done everything you've asked me to do. I remember having that conversation with my dad one time after I didn't hoe the corn like I was supposed to. I'd gone through the rows. And one of the things with reference to corn, I don't know, how many of you sucker corn? You know what I'm talking about sucker? Okay, I'm not too far. Some of you are taking you way back. When the corn first came up, just before the ears had come on, there'd be other stalks come up, and you'd sucker it, so there's one main stalk. And I'd gone through, and I'd hoed, and I'd even taken the time. I felt pretty good. I'd taken the weeds out. I'd actually moved some fresh dirt up around each one of the stalks. But it was hot. I wasn't about to bend down, because there were a bunch of suckers coming up. I said, I'll do that tomorrow. What did I ask you to do? I did everything. No, you didn't. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's sometimes in here he's going, I never. Let me get back to where I was. I never transgressed your commandment any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon, and I love this phrase. See, here's where we find ourselves many times. My brother, he does not say my brother. In fact, that's the major problem. He doesn't recognize him anymore. He's holding up to the tradition of the family. That sorry, no account, clean jumping nitwit left house. And he doesn't deserve to come back in here. I've been working my tail off. I've been doing everything I'm supposed to do. And he comes bopping up the road like everything's okay. And some of you are going, well, I know how the brother feels. He says, this son of yours. I mean, don't you have the same mama? This son of yours who has devoured your livelihood, and he's not holding back. He's reminding his father of where he's been and what he's done. He's been with harlots. You killed the fatted calf for him? I hope you get the thought of this. You don't have to leave home to leave the porch. You can be in the right place for years, doing what you presuppose to be the right thing. And there's a moment in Matthew 7 where Jesus says, many will say to me that day, Lord, Lord, didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do many wondrous things in your name? I've always wanted, that to me is, in one sense to me, is one of the more scary passages in all of Scripture. Because I get this feeling that there's a group of individuals that are just so convinced, God, I'm doing everything you want me to do. What the Son had been doing. He'd been doing everything he thought the Father wanted to do, but why had he been doing it? Now, I'm going to make a judgment here, and you're going to come to me later, and we may wrestle with this a little bit, but it seems to me that the whole thought process here, Pharisees, scribes, the man has received sinners and eats with them, is the son at the house had forgotten he used to be a sinner too. Son at the house had forgotten just doing the right stuff's not enough. Was there some sort of concern in the son outside the house who was saying, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. He's come back, and now what's supposed to be mine, he's going to get part of that, and I'm not going to get everything that's coming to me. I hadn't invested all this time. I hadn't stayed at this house to end up with nothing. If you stay at the house just for the stuff, you've missed the point. Yeah, but wait a minute. God rewards. Is it? Can you go to the far country without ever leaving the house? Now, I know this may be a little hard for you, and maybe the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. He spoke this parable to them, saying, one sheep, one coin, either son is significantly important to me enough to do whatever it takes to let him know I still love him. Can we get so used to going through the motions of being in the right place, doing the right thing, that we forget why we're doing them? See, the lost are still so lost. And one of my I do not want to be lost at home. I don't want to be in the right place doing the right things for the wrong reason. Now, some of you may come and say, man, you are judging this son harshly. But I want us to, at least for a moment, if you'll allow me that, will you be honest? How many times do we see those who struggle? And our first assessment, other than what can we do to help or win them back, is how did they get in a sorry shape? Then what poor choices have they made? Does that change how we approach them? I think it does. What was the great concern with Jesus spending time with those who were struggling? But But he's supposed to be with us because we're right. He's supposed to be at my house because I'm doing everything he's wanting me to do. You see, Jesus said, don't ever get so comfortable at home that you forget where you came from to start with. I don't know what he said to him. The words that are used in the end of verse 28 is he pleaded with him to come inside. There's a parallel in the Old Testament to this, to me, and a parallel sometimes in our culture, the way we look at certain individuals. I don't want to start labeling and listing particular sins because there are no sins worse than the other sins, but if I were to go around individually in this congregation and start talking to you individually, there are probably some particular sins that you go, well, there's, I understand some things, but I don't understand that because we just don't. It's not something we've ever struggled with. It's something we've never dealt with. And when you say, when that happens, how in the world could you do that? When in the same regard, that person might look at us and say, how in the world could you do what you've done? Because that's the reason he steps outside the house. See, God will leave the front porch to go halfway to meet the sun. He'll leave the back porch to meet us when we go, I'm just ticked. I'm not going to, you're doing the wrong thing. You're not treating me right because I've done everything you've asked me to do. And you're celebrating this no good individual that's come home. Well, that no good individual is your brother. What? Yep. Gave birth to him just like we gave birth to you, your mom and I. He said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. You know that reminder I told you about the deep pockets of God? Since the beginning moment in time when Jesus looked out, or God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit looked out over the formless void that was darkness and spoke, let there be light, and then shortly after that made a decision among themselves, however we do it from the Trinity discussion yesterday, let us make man in our image. Knowing the whole time when he made that statement, there are going to be those individuals in the wisdom and the foreknowledge and the plan of God, there are going to be those individuals that leave the place that we make for them that is ideal. They're going to make poor choices. They're going to go away. I'm going to have to figure out some way to bring them back. Now, in the initial moment of that, he set up a cherubim that guarded the exit and the entrance to Garden of Eden. You can't get in. There's no access anymore. That is until the cross. And it's Calvary, thousands of years later, where Jesus finally hung suspended between heaven and earth, and God said from the heavens, all that I have is yours. The veil of the temple torn, the entrance once again granted. You get over to the book of Revelation chapter 22, and guess what shows back up near the house? It's the tree of life. For every moment that you say, where's my celebration? Know this, there will be a celebration one day. I've been privileged through the years to go to a lot of events. Some decided to, some invited to, where there are moments where individuals are celebrating various things that go on in their lives. And they're all the way from huge to tiny to intimate to just gargantuan in scheme. But can you imagine what it's going to be like one day when God turns to his son and said, it's time, and he says, go bring him home. and the celebration that's going to take place. I can't get my brain around all of what that means, but I want to tell you this. I'd better be near the house when that call comes. I need to either be headed back toward the house, or I need to, if I'm working just outside the house, my intention needs to be headed back to go inside, because if I stay outside, if I decide I'm not going to get on the porch because you're not doing things the way that I expect you to do them, I'm going to tell you something with all the love in my heart. We'd better all be phenomenally grateful that God doesn't care if we've wandered far away or if we've just wandered a few inches. He still wants us home. And He will do whatever it takes to make sure we understand. Maybe you've gone miles. Maybe you've just gone a few minutes. But I'm still here, and I'll leave the house. I'll meet you more than halfway, and I'll plead with you. I'll party with you, but I will never desert you. Everything I have is yours. That's what God wants us to know. We're not going to... Satan has lied and lied and lied for years. What he told Eve in the garden was God's holding out. What he's told every individual. You see, there's another individual, a lot like the older brother, I think of Jonah, outside the city of Nineveh going, I've told him, now it's your turn. Do what you're supposed to. Right? Goes out and sits hoping to see fireworks. What he sees is ashes and penitence. And he's ticked off. I guess I'm just trying to get back into our hearts and say, it's time that our ticked offness is directed towards Satan, not sinners. And that we, like God, are going to the nth degree, whether it's on the front porch running down the road or just out the back porch trying to get somebody back in. Whatever we need to do or say. Because Jesus says, I came for those who are sick. Not the ones that are already comfortable in the house, but the ones that need desperately to hear again. My son who is dead is alive. Or the son that's staying close needs to know that everything I've got is his. I don't know where you're at tonight. Maybe neither. You might be safe inside the house and totally content, and I hope that's a great place, but I want you to know that there are individuals outside the house that need our attention. Let's be reminded. That's why He came. That's why He left us here. We can assist you in any way tonight. Initial penitent faith, confession, baptism, restoration to a relationship, prayer request of something you need to share that we need to be aware of to help in any way we can. Would you come as we stand and as we sing?